people from, like, if I talk to a trade association, the American Dairy Council or whatever, and one of the questions I always like to ask for fields I don't know that much about is, what are the internal arguments within the industry that get the people most worked up? Not Republican versus Democrat or anything like that, but like, what are the issues? Like with some agriculture groups, it's things like ethanol and wind, because it has to do with property rights and government subsidies and that kind of thing. So like, what are the issues that can start a fight at a UFO convention because people are come down on one side or the
other? Great question. It's very different probably than the dairy industry, but UFO Twitter is just a hotbed of drama and gossip and hate and fighting. And those things do break out at the conventions. The topics that most often start fights are if you bring up Bob Lazar. I don't know if you know who Bob Lazar is.
I don't. I assume I know very, very little about it.
Okay, Bob Lazar is a guy who came out back in the 90s and claimed that he worked in a very, very ultra secret section at Area 51, and he had been brought there to try to reverse engineer the propulsion systems of 9 UFOs that they had captured, but they couldn't figure out how to operate. And he said he was going public with his story because he had been making noises about leaving and whatnot, and he did leave the base, and he was worried that they were going to come kill him. And Bob Lazar has his advocates, his dedicated fans who believe absolutely it's true. And then there's another, probably slightly larger part of the ufology community that think it's complete nonsense and he just makes everybody look bad. So that's one thing that'll start a fight. Contactees start a fight because there's a lot of people, like myself, who have no problem with the idea of there being UFOs. We've actually seen UFOs. But then there's the people who go really deep. They claim to have been contacted by aliens, by beings, and had interactions with them, sometimes very unpleasant interactions. And that's another area that seems to trip a lot of people off. It's like, no, there's ships, we've seen them. But if you go around talking about aliens, then once again, everybody just thinks we're crazy. So that tends to start fights. And the lack of videos from the government, some people think, well, they just don't have anything. Well, a lot of the rest are convinced it's a conspiracy that's been going on since the 1940s. And I'm more in that camp personally. But I'd say those are three of the biggest ones that you see a lot of arguments about.